Welcome to Egopedia, where emotions, ego, and relationships meet. In today's video, we dive into a tough but important question. What should you do when your partner is too selfish? If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or emotionally drained, this episode is for you. Let's uncover the signs, the causes, and the right steps to protect your peace.
What should you do when your partner is too selfish? The quiet pain of an imbalanced relationship. In every healthy relationship, mutual respect, compromise, and empathy form the foundation. But what happens when one partner becomes so focused on their own needs that the relationship begins to tilt dangerously out of balance? A selfish partner can slowly drain the emotional reservoir of even the most patient and loving individual. When your emotional contributions are met with indifference and your needs are constantly overlooked, the question arises, what should you do when your partner is too selfish? This article explores the psychological landscape of selfishness in intimate relationships and provides practical strategies to address and cope with it. 2. Understanding selfishness in relationships. Expanded. Selfishness in romantic relationships often isn't about dramatic displays of ego or dominance. It's far more subtle and insidious. It can wear the mask of ambition, independence, or emotional detachment, making it hard to spot until the emotional damage has already taken root. A. The psychology behind selfish behavior. At its core, selfishness is the prioritization of one's own needs, desires, and emotions above those of others, consistently and without consideration. But this behavior usually doesn't come from pure malice. Many people who act selfishly in relationships are doing so unconsciously, often driven by deeper psychological forces such as insecurity. A person who feels unworthy or fears abandonment might focus excessively on their own needs as a protective mechanism. They may take more than they give to feel secure. Entitlement. Some individuals genuinely believe they deserve more attention, care, or control due to their upbringing, past experiences, or personality traits. Avoidant attachment style. Individuals with avoidant tendencies may seem selfish because they resist emotional closeness, dismiss their partner's needs, and prefer emotional independence at all costs. Narcissistic traits. While not every selfish partner has narcissistic personality disorder, some may show narcissistic tendencies, such as lack of empathy, grandiosity, and excessive need for admiration, that contribute to consistently selfish behaviors. B. Types of selfishness in relationships. Selfishness can take many forms. Here are a few to recognize. Emotional selfishness. Your partner expects you to always be emotionally available for them but fails to reciprocate. They may downplay your emotions or change the subject when the conversation shifts to your concerns. Time and attention monopolization. They expect you to prioritize their schedule, needs, and comfort, often at the expense of your own responsibilities and well-being. Decision-making control. They dominate decisions, from small daily choices to major life plans, rarely asking for your input or disregarding it altogether. A lack of reciprocity. Relationships should have a natural give and take. When your gestures of care, compromise, or support are not returned, or worse, expected as a given, it reveals a deep imbalance. Manipulative guilt-tripping. They may play the victim when held accountable, turning the focus back to themselves and making you feel guilty for even bringing up your feelings. C. The normal versus problematic spectrum. It's important to acknowledge that everyone has moments of self-focus. It's human nature. During periods of stress, illness, or personal transition, it's natural for someone to temporarily retreat inward. A supportive partner understands and adapts during such times. However, when selfish behavior becomes habitual, persistent, and dismissive of your needs, it becomes a relational problem. Ask yourself, is this a pattern or an isolated incident? Do they show remorse or willingness to change? Are your emotional needs consistently invalidated or postponed? Your answers will help distinguish between a relationship that's temporarily out of sync and one that's deeply unbalanced. D. The long-term impact of unchecked selfishness. Left unaddressed, selfishness corrodes trust and intimacy. Over time, it conditions one partner to expect less, suppress their needs, or constantly negotiate for emotional space. This dynamic can lead to a form of emotional codependency, where the selfless partner adapts their entire identity around pleasing the selfish one, often at the cost of their mental health. Understanding selfishness isn't just about identifying your partner's flaws. It's about becoming conscious of emotional dynamics that can entrap you in a cycle of giving without receiving. Naming the problem is the first act of reclaiming your voice. 3. How it affects you emotionally and mentally. Expanded. Living with a selfish partner isn't just frustrating, it can be emotionally and mentally draining. The effects aren't always immediate or dramatic, but they accumulate over time, quietly reshaping how you feel about yourself, your worth, and the relationship. A. Emotional exhaustion. The cost of constant giving. When you're the one who always listens, compromises, apologizes, and adjusts, it creates a one-sided emotional economy. You're pouring effort into the relationship, yet receiving little in return. Eventually, your emotional reserves run dry. You may begin to feel tired of trying to explain your needs, discouraged when your gestures of care go unnoticed, overwhelmed by the sense that you're alone, even while physically together. This kind of fatigue is more than physical, it's emotional depletion. It's what happens when you're seen as a utility, not as a human being with equal needs. B. Erosion of self-worth. Repeated exposure to a partner who disregards your feelings or needs can gradually lead you to question your own value. You may start to internalize their neglect and think, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm just not enough. This internal dialogue is dangerous because it shifts the blame from the unhealthy behavior to your self-perception. Over time, you may begin to believe that love must be earned by sacrifice, or that your needs are inherently less important than your partner's. C. Growing resentment and emotional numbness. Resentment doesn't show up all at once. It builds in silence. Every ignored concern, every interrupted story, every unmet emotional need stacks up inside you. At first, you might try harder to make things work, but eventually, you might stop feeling anything at all. This emotional numbness is a protective response. It's your mind's way of surviving the pain of being unseen. But it also creates emotional distance, which further erodes the bond in the relationship. D. Anxiety, overthinking, and self-doubt. Being with a selfish partner can make you second-guess your own instincts. You might start walking on eggshells, overanalyzing your words or actions to avoid conflict or rejection. This leads to chronic anxiety about the relationship's stability, fear of being labeled as too sensitive or too needy, obsessive thinking patterns, like replaying conversations or anticipating their reactions. In extreme cases, this emotional instability can mimic symptoms of emotional abuse. Even if your partner isn't overtly cruel, their consistent neglect can have a deeply similar effect. E. Depression and disconnection. Over time, the emotional disconnection can become so intense that you feel isolated, not just from your partner, but from your own identity. You might lose interest in the things you once enjoyed, withdraw from friends and family, or feel an overwhelming sadness that you can't fully explain. If your relationship becomes a source of emotional burden rather than support, the mental toll can be severe, affecting your motivation, energy, self-image, and even physical health. Why these emotional effects matter. The emotional and mental impact of dealing with a selfish partner is not something you should ignore or normalize. These effects don't just influence how you relate to your partner, they affect how you see yourself, how you navigate future relationships, and how you define love and respect going forward. Recognizing these emotional patterns early is key to setting boundaries, asking for what you need, and protecting your mental health. Love should uplift, not deplete. 4. Signs that your partner's selfishness has crossed the line. Expanded. Recognizing selfishness in a partner can be complicated. It's not always loud or aggressive. It can be passive, polite, or masked as independence. But when it becomes a consistent pattern that disregards your emotional needs, it crosses into unhealthy territory. Below are key signs that your partner's selfish behavior is no longer just a personality quirk, it's a red flag. A. One-way emotional streets. In a balanced relationship, emotional support flows in both directions. When you're excited, sad, anxious, or hurt, a loving partner should be present and responsive. If your partner rarely asks about your day, glosses over your feelings when you share something vulnerable, always finds a way to redirect the conversation back to themselves, then it's no longer a partnership, it's a one-person show. Over time, this emotional invalidation can make you feel invisible. B. Your needs are consistently overlooked or dismissed. Everyone forgets sometimes. But if your partner regularly fails to consider your preferences, comfort, or needs, whether emotional, physical, or practical, it signals a deeper lack of regard. Examples include planning trips or making big decisions without consulting you, ignoring your expressed boundaries or limits, acting irritated or defensive when you ask for support. These behaviors suggest that your presence is being taken for granted, not respected. C. Manipulation disguised as love. Selfish partners sometimes use affection as a tool, not a gift. Watch for patterns like conditional affection. They're kind only when they get their way. A guilt tripping. They make you feel selfish for needing space, help, or recognition. Silent treatment. They withdraw emotionally to control your behavior. This emotional manipulation erodes your sense of autonomy and can trap you in a cycle of constantly trying to please them just to avoid conflict or coldness. D. Disrespect of boundaries. A respectful partner honors your personal limits, even if they don't fully understand them. If your partner frequently pushes your boundaries or tests your patience, uses your vulnerabilities against you in arguments, violates your privacy or personal space, it's not just selfish. It's a form of emotional intrusion. Repeated boundary violations aren't just rude, they're controlling. E. A pattern of taking without giving. This sign is simple but powerful. You're always the one adjusting, giving in, and sacrificing. You might notice. You're always the one rearranging your schedule for them. You cover their responsibilities, emotionally or even financially. They expect help but offer none in return. This imbalance shows that they see your support as a right, not a gift, a fundamental misunderstanding of what a relationship should be. F. Dismissal of feedback or conversations about the issue. When you try to communicate your concerns and are met with defensiveness, you're too sensitive. Dismissiveness, you're overthinking it. Deflection, you do the same thing. It shows a lack of emotional maturity and unwillingness to grow. A loving partner may not get it right at first, but they listen, reflect, and try. A selfish partner avoids accountability at all costs. G. You feel alone, even when you're together. This is perhaps the most telling sign of all. If you frequently feel emotionally unsupported, unseen and unheard, more at peace when they're not around, then the relationship may have become emotionally unsafe. A truly intimate relationship should feel like a refuge, not a place where you must constantly explain or defend your right to exist as a full, complex person. Why recognizing these signs matters. Early detection of these patterns allows you to reclaim your emotional space and take meaningful action, whether that's through setting clearer boundaries, seeking couples counseling, or deciding to walk away. The longer these behaviors go unchallenged, the deeper the emotional toll. Selfishness becomes toxic not simply because of what your partner does, but because of what you stop doing for yourself in response. Advocating, expressing, dreaming, and being. 5. Reclaiming your voice. Communication as the first tool, expanded. When you're in a relationship with a selfish partner, one of the first casualties is often your voice, not literally, but emotionally. You may start suppressing your thoughts to avoid arguments, downplaying your needs to keep the peace, or even questioning whether your feelings are valid. This internal silence is a slow erosion of self-respect. But the first and most powerful step toward reclaiming your emotional space is clear, intentional communication. A. Why communication matters more than ever. In a selfish dynamic, power becomes unbalanced. Your voice, the expression of your needs, values, and boundaries, is the only tool that can begin to recalibrate that imbalance. Effective communication doesn't guarantee change, but it sets the standard. It tells your partner and yourself what you will no longer ignore, minimize, or tolerate. Speaking up is not about confrontation. It's about connection. It's saying, I still believe this relationship is worth fighting for, but I will not do it alone anymore. B. Using I statements to express feelings without blame. Selfish partners often react defensively when they feel criticized. That's why how you express yourself matters as much as what you express. I statements help keep the focus on your experience instead of making accusations. For example, white heavy checkmark, I feel hurt when I share something personal and it's brushed aside. White heavy checkmark, I feel unimportant when my efforts aren't acknowledged. White heavy checkmark, I need to feel emotionally supported in order to stay connected to you. This approach fosters dialogue, not defensiveness. It frames your needs as an invitation for understanding, rather than an attack. C. Be specific and timely. Generalized complaints like, you're always selfish, tend to provoke denial. Instead, describe specific incidents. Yesterday, when I was telling you about my difficult day and you changed the subject, I felt dismissed. Last week, I rearranged my schedule to support your deadline, but when I needed help, you said you were too tired. Specificity helps your partner see patterns rather than feel accused, and it helps you track whether anything is actually changing over time. D. Set clear expectations, not just complaints. Talking about the problem is just the beginning. You also need to express what you want to see moving forward, such as, I need us to have check-ins where we both talk about our week. I need you to ask how I'm feeling, not just tell me how you are. I want more balance in how we share household and emotional responsibilities. Clear expectations give your partner a chance to step up and also help you gauge whether they're willing and capable of change. E. Prepare for pushback and stay grounded. Selfish partners often respond to emotional honesty with deflection, you're overreacting. Minimization, it's not a big deal. Victimization, so now I'm the bad guy. Expect this. Recognize it not as truth, but as resistance to accountability. Stay calm, assertive, and emotionally rooted. Reclaiming your voice is also about not abandoning your truth in the face of emotional pushback. F. Create a safe emotional space for dialogue. Sometimes it's not just what you say, but when and where you say it. Choose moments when both of you are relatively calm. Avoid intense discussions during emotionally charged times, e.g., in the middle of a fight or when one of you is exhausted. If necessary, frame the conversation like this. Can we talk about something important? I want to feel closer to you, and I think we need to understand each other better. This signals that your intention isn't to attack, but to repair. G. Know when words are not enough. Communication is the starting point, but it isn't a magic fix. If you've clearly expressed your needs multiple times and your partner still ignores your boundaries, avoids responsibility, dismisses your pain, continues the same behavior, it may be time to move beyond conversation and into action, whether that means setting firmer boundaries, seeking professional counseling, or considering whether the relationship is sustainable. Why reclaiming your voice is a form of self-respect. Speaking up is not a demand for perfection, it's a declaration of dignity. It tells your partner that your presence in the relationship comes with depth, needs, and worth. If your partner truly values the connection, they will listen, reflect, and respond. If they don't, that silence is an answer in itself. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not selfish for needing balance. Reclaiming your voice is not just about saving the relationship. Sometimes, it's about saving yourself. 6. Set boundaries and stick to them. Expanded. In relationships with a selfish partner, boundaries are not just helpful, they are essential. Without them, your emotional, mental, and even physical well-being can become vulnerable to erosion. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are guidelines to keep you safe within the relationship. They define what's acceptable, what's not, and what happens if those lines are crossed. And yet, many people hesitate to set boundaries out of fear. Fear of being seen as cold, of triggering conflict, or of losing the relationship entirely. But here's the truth. Any relationship that cannot survive healthy boundaries is already unstable. A. What boundaries really mean. Boundaries are not about control. They're about clarity. They say, this is how I want to be treated. This is what I will no longer tolerate. This is how I will respond if my needs are ignored. They are expressions of self-respect, not ultimatums. There are different types of boundaries you may need to set. Emotional boundaries. I will not accept being guilt-tripped when I express my needs. Time boundaries. I need dedicated time for myself without being made to feel guilty. Communication boundaries. If the conversation turns hurtful or disrespectful, I will end it until we can talk calmly. Physical boundaries. I don't feel comfortable with certain behaviors or touching when I've asked for space. B. How to set boundaries clearly and calmly. Clarity is key. A vague boundary will be ignored or manipulated. Be specific and firm. White heavy checkmark. I'm okay with helping you when I have capacity, but I can't drop everything at the last minute anymore. White heavy checkmark. When you raise your voice, I shut down. I will walk away if that continues during arguments. White heavy checkmark. I need 1 day a week to focus on my own activities without pressure or interruption. Avoid passive hints or emotional outbursts. Calm. Direct language reinforces your seriousness and confidence. C. Expect resistance, but stay grounded. Selfish partners may resist boundaries for one simple reason. They disrupt the comfort of imbalance. The common reactions include mocking your boundary. Oh, now you have rules? Guilt tripping. So, I guess you don't care about me anymore. Testing the limits by pushing just beyond your stated line to see if you'll enforce it. This is where many people falter, not in setting boundaries but in holding them. Consistency is crucial. If you state a boundary but don't follow through on the consequences, you unintentionally train your partner to ignore your limits. D. Consequences are not punishments, they're protection. Boundaries without consequences are just wishes. Consequences are not about revenge, they are about self-protection. For example, if your partner interrupts your alone time despite multiple conversations, you may need to leave the space entirely and spend time elsewhere. If they continue to invalidate your emotions, you may need to pause discussions and revisit them only in a safe setting, such as therapy. You are not being dramatic or harsh. You are protecting your emotional and mental energy from ongoing harm. E. Boundaries rebuild your identity. In relationships with selfish dynamics, people often lose themselves, sacrificing hobbies, friendships, routines, and even values to keep things stable. Boundaries help you remember and return to yourself. They reinforce that your time matters, that your needs are valid, that your inner peace is worth defending. As you grow firmer in setting limits, you may even discover who you are outside the relationship and whether the relationship still aligns with your evolving sense of self. Why boundaries are the beginning of healing. Boundaries are not the end of love. They are the beginning of real, mutual love. A partner who truly values you will adjust, listen, and meet you in that respectful space. A partner who resists your growth and autonomy may reveal they were never truly willing to share the relationship in the first place. Setting boundaries is an act of courage, but it's also a quiet revolution. It is how you stop leaking energy, how you reclaim your voice, and how you begin writing a new chapter, whether together or apart, on your own terms. 7. Don't become what you're trying to escape. Expand it. When you've been hurt, overlooked, or emotionally drained by a selfish partner, it's natural to develop defense mechanisms. You might start pulling back emotionally, becoming colder, more guarded, or less generous. At first, it feels like self-protection. But if left unchecked, this shift can subtly transform you into a version of the very thing you're trying to get away from, emotionally unavailable, indifferent, or reactive. Selfishness is contagious in toxic environments. That's why one of the most important acts of emotional resilience is this: to stay soft without becoming a doormat, and strong without becoming heartless. A. The risk of emotional retaliation. When you're hurt repeatedly, there's a temptation to respond in kind. If they don't care about me, why should I care about them? I'll ignore them just like they ignore me. I'll stop giving anything unless I get something first. While these responses may feel justified, they often come from a place of emotional exhaustion, not clarity. You may begin mimicking their selfish behaviors as a subconscious form of punishment or to regain a sense of control. But in doing so, You risk hardening your heart, not healing it. B. Guarding yourself versus withdrawing from yourself. There's a difference between setting healthy boundaries and shutting yourself off entirely. Sometimes, in the name of being strong, you may disconnect from your own needs, stop asking for support, or even push away people who care. This self-isolation can look like empowerment, but often it's pain in disguise. Protecting yourself doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb. It means learning how to give with discernment, love with self-respect, and walk away without bitterness when your worth isn't honored. C. Reconnecting with your core values. To avoid becoming what you've endured, you must remember who you were before the pain. What kind of partner do you want to be, even when things are hard? What values do you want to carry with you? Compassion, empathy, honesty? How do you want to speak, act, and show up in relationships, regardless of how others behave? Your identity shouldn't be shaped solely in reaction to another person's shortcomings. It should be built on your intentions, integrity, and clarity of self. D. Breaking the cycle of emotional contagion. In unhealthy relationships, one person's selfishness can invite another's passive aggression, bitterness, or emotional disengagement. This creates a feedback loop that degrades connection further. The antidote? Awareness. Pause and ask yourself, am I acting from who I want to be, or reacting to who they are? Are my boundaries coming from self-respect or silent revenge? What am I teaching myself about love through my response to this? These questions help you break the emotional cycle and respond from consciousness, not trauma. E. Heal without harming. As you begin healing and reclaiming your identity, the goal isn't to win power over your partner. It's to reclaim your peace within yourself. True healing doesn't require you to dominate or punish. It requires you to move forward without carrying the emotional poison of someone else's behavior. Let your growth be your closure. Let your peace be your power. Let your clarity be your compass. In doing so, you become the kind of partner and person you always hoped they would be. Not because you owe it to them, but because you owe it to yourself. Why this step matters. This point is the emotional turning point in your journey. It's where you draw a line in the sand, not just with your partner, but with your own reaction to their behavior. If you don't make this distinction, you risk repeating the same dynamic in future relationships or losing the very self you're trying to protect. Resisting the urge to mirror toxicity is not weakness, it's maturity. It's the mark of someone who has chosen growth over resentment, self-respect over ego, and healing over retribution. 8. When change doesn't come. Choosing your path, expanded. You've spoken up. You've set boundaries. You've asked for change, not once, but repeatedly. And still, your partner remains stuck in patterns of selfishness, unable or unwilling to meet you halfway. This is the crossroads many people fear most, the moment when hope collides with reality, and the relationship forces a difficult question. Can I stay without losing myself? Or must I walk away to protect who I am? This decision isn't about quitting. It's about honoring the truth that love alone is not enough when respect, effort, and growth are absent. A. Recognizing the limits of your influence. It's natural to want to believe that your love, patience, and support will eventually inspire change. But people change because they choose to, not because they're given endless chances. When your partner continues ignoring your emotional needs, repeating harmful behaviors despite conversations, dismissing your boundaries, or blaming you for your reactions, it's a sign that the relationship dynamic is no longer just unhealthy, it's unsustainable. You are not responsible for healing someone who refuses to see they're hurting you. B. When effort becomes self-sacrifice. There's a difference between working through hard times and sacrificing your well-being just to keep the relationship afloat. Ask yourself, am I thriving or just surviving in this relationship? Do I feel seen, heard, and respected, or just tolerated? Am I growing or shrinking to fit into their comfort zone? If your loyalty to the relationship is costing you your mental health, identity, or sense of peace, then staying becomes a form of self-abandonment, not love. C. The emotional tug-of-war, guilt versus self-compassion. Leaving a relationship, especially when love still exists, is one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make. You might feel guilt. Am I giving up too soon? Fear. What if I never find someone else? Hope. What if they change after I leave? But here's what you need to remember. Your decision should not be based on who they might become. It should be based on who they are showing you they are now. Self-compassion means recognizing when you've done all you can and choosing to release the responsibility of carrying the entire relationship on your shoulders. D. Choosing a path. Stay and accept, or leave and reclaim. There are only two healthy paths when change doesn't come. 1. Stay with acceptance. If you choose to stay, it must come from a place of clarity, not delusion. You must accept that your partner may never meet your emotional needs and stop expecting something they've shown they cannot or will not give. This requires inner detachment, not resentment. 2. Leave with integrity. If you choose to leave, let it be a conscious act of self-respect. You're not walking away from the person. You're walking toward the life you know you deserve. Leaving doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It means the relationship stopped being right for you. Both paths require strength. One demands radical acceptance. The other demands courageous detachment. Only you can decide which one leads you closer to peace. E. You are not failing. You are awakening. Many people see the end of a relationship as a personal failure. But sometimes the bravest, most self-loving act is letting go. You are not giving up. You are waking up to the truth, to your worth, and to the fact that love without reciprocity becomes emotional starvation. You are allowed to outgrow a relationship that no longer fits your values. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos. You are allowed to walk away even if no one understands, because you understand. Closing thought: the power of your choice. No therapist, friend, or article can make this decision for you. But you are not helpless. You hold the one thing that can reshape your life: choice. And with that choice comes power, not just to leave a harmful dynamic, but to rewrite your own story. A story where your needs matter, your heart is safe, and your life is no longer dictated by someone else's selfishness. Choosing your path is not about rejecting love. It's about choosing a love that includes you in it. You deserve mutuality. Relationships should nourish, not deplete. If you find yourself always accommodating, always compromising, always forgiving, while your partner takes without giving, it's time to pause and ask, where am I in this relationship? Recognizing and confronting selfishness in a partner is not about blaming, but about reclaiming your emotional equilibrium. You deserve a love that listens, gives, and grows with you, not one that demands your silence for its comfort. The measure of a healthy relationship is not how much you're willing to endure, but how well both partners honor each other's emotional needs. Don't settle for one-sided love. Self-respect is not selfish. It's necessary.